Right now, I am at the Dachau concentration camp. In the past couple episodes of History Traveler, we were here at the Dachau concentration camp complex talking about the operations here and some of the history of this awful place. And we don't know the names of everyone who came through this camp, but we know the names of some. One of them was a guy by the name of Martin Niemöller. Martin Niemöller was a Lutheran pastor who was German. He'd spent some time at Sachsenhausen concentration camp and then made his way to Dachau, where he spent a good deal of time in this building right here. This is the prison block of the Dachau concentration camp, which at the time was called the bunker. As I mentioned, this is the bunker here at Dachau. This is the prison block where the quote-unquote special prisoners were brought to be held, and one of those special prisoners was Martin Niemöller. Now, when Hitler came to power in 1933, Niemöller was actually an enthusiastic supporter of Hitler and thought that, the rise of German nationalism would be good for German Protestantism. Well, as time marched on and Hitler and the Nazi Party started to, reveal their true colors, well, Martin Niemöller started to realize just what Hitler was all about. There was a movement to ban the Old Testament, of course, because of its Jewish ties. There was a move to kind of, ostracize or target Christians with a Jewish origin. And Niemöller ended up becoming a very outspoken critic of the Third Reich, and because of that, ended up being arrested and first was sent to the Sachsenhausen prison, where he was placed in solitary confinement, and then was transferred here to Dachau. So we're going to go into the bunker here and take a look at this place and talk a little bit more about Martin Niemöller. Before we go in, I wanted to walk over here to the eastern side of the courtyard. The wall that we are looking at right now was the site for executions by firing squad. There would have been a dividing wall behind me to kind of block that off, but they would bring prisoners out through this door and then line them up here to be executed. And then over here on the left-hand side, kind of in the corner, were the gallows, where they would also hang prisoners. Now, later on, the executions would be moved to the other side of the camp and then off-site. But yeah, pretty somber to think of the lives that were ended right here. Okay, so this is the front entrance to the bunker, and the room that we are walking into right now is the SS guard room. So if we look over here, you can see that they have some photos of some of the SS guards who operated here in the bunker, like Johann Kantschuster, who was really known for being an exceptionally cruel person. He murdered several prisoners. Here's another one here. This is Joseph Seuss. He says here that he was a guard or a member of the headquarters staff from 1938 to 1942 and was sentenced to death at the first Dachau trial. But yeah, the SS guards who were here at this camp, like I said, were just exceptionally cruel and bloodthirsty. They would beat the prisoners. They would deny them food. I mean, just absolute acts of sadism and depravity. So if you look right here, they depict one of those acts. This is something called a pole hanging. This was used by the SS to punish prisoners or to extract confessions. All right, we are moving now into the prison block. And here on the left, well, this is the registration room where prisoners would be brought in to, be registered or processed, that is. And the next room down, well, this cell right here held a person that we talked about on a previous episode of History Traveler. Right here, this man, this is George Elser. And George Elser was a cabinet maker. He also had associations with the Communist Party, and on November 8th of 1939, he attempted to assassinate Adolf Hitler with a bomb. The attempt failed. Elser was captured and was brought here to Dachau as a quote-unquote special prisoner. He was first at Sachsenhausen and then was transferred here in 1945, where he was kept in strict solitary confinement. But he stayed in different cells, but this was one of them. And on April 9th of 1945, he was taken out by the crematorium and murdered. And they have an information panel here that shows some of the damage from the bomb that he planted that was close to the podium where Hitler was speaking. But this was one of the cells where George Elser was held. There is something exceptionally chilling about this room right here. This is the interrogation room that was used by the Gestapo, or the secret police. And in this particular room, they had cavity walls and they had double doors. So this was different from all of the other rooms. And those things were to prevent the cries of torture from being heard on the outside. So there were some awful things that took place. And up here, they show some photos of a few of the prisoners who were here, like this man. This is Erwin Gassner. And it says here that he was a policeman in Innsbruck, Austria, and had been employed in combating Nazism before the German occupation, and then was arrested in March of '38 and sent here to Dachau. And he ended up going to the Mauthausen concentration camp. Here's another one. This is Heinz Feldheim. He was an economist from Munich. He was arrested as an anti-Nazi and a Jew in June of 1936 and also sent here to Dachau. I've mentioned already how cruel the treatment of prisoners was here in the bunker, and this room really illustrates that. In 1944, the camp authorities installed 4 standing cells. So if we look at this illustration, you can see how these cells, which are already small, were subdivided into even smaller portions. And the floor area, it says here, would be 70 centimeters by 70 centimeters. So you're looking at about 2.5 feet square. And that would prevent the prisoners from being able to either lie down or kneel or anything like that. So they would be imprisoned in here for like 72 hours at a time, just to inflict an extra measure of cruelty. In 1943, the western part of the bunker here was blocked off, and there was a door put here, and there were 8 cells that were, I guess, kind of blocked off for the religious clergy. One of those was Martin Niemöller, and his cell was right here in cell 30. December 25th of 1944 would be Martin Niemöller's 8th Christmas in a concentration camp. And on Christmas Eve of 44, well, Niemöller, the Lutheran pastor, was allowed to conduct a Christmas Eve service with, I think, a half dozen other inmates right here in this room. This is cell 34, and there was an altar in there at one point, but it has been removed. But Niemöller was going to go through a transformation here in this place. I mentioned that he was an ardent supporter of Hitler and the Nazis to begin with, and kind of looked at German nationalism as something that he could hitch his wagon to, and that it would help propel German Protestantism. But it was here where, under Nazi cruelty, all of them were undergoing the same thing here, people from all places and all nationalities. And Niemöller started to realize that the gospel is for all people. This wasn't easy. He is going to be losing 2 kids during the Second World War, and is going to be put through the fire. But it is something that is going to be absolutely transformative for this man. Like all suffering, the suffering of Martin Niemöller wouldn't last forever. The war would end, and he would survive this awful place. But he would come out of it a changed man. In 1946, he was speaking before his German countrymen, and he used it as an opportunity to repent and to confess of his past sins. Now, you may have not heard the name Martin Niemöller, but you've probably heard this quote where he said, "First they came for the communists, and I didn't say anything because I wasn't a communist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't say anything because I wasn't a trade unionist. And then they came for the Jews, and I didn't say anything because I wasn't a Jew. And when they came for me, there was no one left to speak for me." When people look at awful places like Dachau, it's reasonable to assume that they're going to come away with different points of view. Some would look at places of suffering like this and say that the presence of this proves that there is no God, because he would never allow anything like this to happen, which from a biblical point of view has always been odd to me, because it's holding God to account for something that he never promised. Nowhere in the Bible does it say anything that we are going to live a life free from suffering. As a matter of fact, it basically guarantees that there will be suffering. And then there are people like Martin Niemöller. For Martin Niemöller, this is a place that deepened his faith. There's an old Quaker saying that the same sun that melts the ice hardens the clay. And for Martin Niemöller, this gave him a clarity that he would hold for the rest of his life, and that he would use to change the lives of many others. So what some people had meant for evil here at Dachau, well, God had meant for good. I hate that places like this have ever existed, but I'm thankful for people like Martin Niemöller, who have showed us that you can survive difficult circumstances, and it doesn't have to break you, and it doesn't have to leave you embittered and angry, but that you can take some of life's worst tragedies and turn it into something good. That was a little bit from Martin Niemöller and a little bit of the bunker here at Dachau.